Okay, I'm going to show you guys how to, once you're done completely building your smooth coil vase, how to really smooth out the outside, get it nice and smooth looking. So you can see I've started to do it on this side, but we can see the difference between this and this right here. We've got a lot of little bumpy areas, some little nicks from the tools or my fingers or my template. And so what we really want to try to do is get this really nice and smooth so that when we end up glazing this, there's a nice smooth surface and we don't see any of those tiny little bumps and things coming up on your clay. So the first thing is you need to finish building it, and then you need to let it dry to where it is about leather hard. So it shouldn't be so dry that it's starting to turn colors to that light gray color, but it should still feel kind of cold to the touch, a little bit wet, but you can see this is firm enough and strong enough to where I can hold it and kind of apply a little bit of pressure without it messing up the actual form of my vase. So if you feel like you're not able to pick this up and apply pressure to it gently without it, caving in the overall form of your vase, then you want to leave this out a little bit longer, maybe put it outside in the sun for 10 minutes, let it dry out a little bit more to where it feels firm enough that you can hold it like this without having to worry about the form of it being jeopardized. And so what you're going to do is, to get it nice and smooth on the outside, you can use one of these serrated metal rib tools. Now, those of you at home probably don't have this available to you. That's okay. If you don't have something like this at home, you can use a serrated knife. So any sort of knife, like a steak knife, that has these little pointy parts on them. And it needs to be something that has little pointy parts on them. This isn't the best one. If you get like a really good steak knife, that would work the best, but this one will do. And so I'll show you how to do this with both of these tools. So what we want to do to get this nice and smooth, and this may seem counterproductive, but we actually want to start scratching up the surface of this to even out all these bumps. And so I'll first show you how to use this tool. So you're going to start scratching. And now this is only for the really, really small bumps. If you've got really big bumps, you can carve them away using a loop tool, or you can paddle them down. But once you get to the point where you've just got these kind of small bumps going, you want to start scratching up the surface. And the trick to this is you want to go in different directions. So I'm going to go up and down, then I'm going to go across. I'm not pressing super hard because I don't want to dent into my clay, but I'm pressing firm enough to where I'm creating those scratch lines in my vase. And you do want to do this all over. And I'll show you kind of how we can do it with the knife. So using the knife and the serrated edge, you basically just want something that's going to create a lot of lines on this. And you can see the lines aren't as deep with this, but that's okay. Still doing the job. The main thing is that you're going in different directions. So up and down, diagonally, across. And you can see there's not a ton of clay coming off. Even on this one where I did more, there's really not that much clay coming off. So if you see lots of big chunks of clay coming off, you're probably pressing a little too hard. Just let up on that pressure a little bit. And so what this is doing is it's just starting to even out the surface of your vase. It's getting rid of any of those tiny little bumps and kind of carving them down. And so if you are doing this and you start to feel your vase cave in while you're applying pressure, that means it needs to dry out a little bit more. It needs to be to where it's leather hard. All right. And so you can do this in little sections like I've done. I would still have to do it up here a little bit, or you could scratch up the whole thing all at once. I'm just doing it in a little section. I like to do it in sections at a time. Then what you're going to do when you're ready, kind of get all these little flakes off there. Always make sure that your table is clear of those flakes, because if you set it down on top of them, they're going to stick to the bottom. Then what you want to do is use some water and your hand. Do not use a sponge. If you use a sponge, you'll start to notice that these little, the grog will come up, which is these little tiny pieces. They kind of feel like sand and they look like sand. You'll start to see them a little bit when you're doing this with your hand, but definitely not as much as if you were to do it with a sponge. And then what you want to do is just kind of use your wet hand to start to get rid of all of those scratchy lines. And so this is the important part too. You want to make sure that there's no scratch lines left over, or else it's going to look probably pretty unappealing, because we want a nice smooth surface, as smooth as we can get it. And again, the advantage to having a smooth surface is that glaze. We want a nice smooth surface to put the glaze on. If because the glaze is shiny most often, it starts to show all those imperfections of where your vase may not be super smooth. And so you may not get all of the bumps out on the first try. That's okay. You can kind of let this dry a little bit so it's not sticky. And you go to do it again. And then go over it one more time. So it looks pretty nice. You can see the difference between this and this, where I've got all these little bumps and imperfections. This is a lot smoother. I think about right here, I've got a little bit of bumps. Might not be as visible in the camera, but I've got some more bumps that I think I'm going to want to go over. And so you would want to do this to your entire vase. And you can see the difference between this and this. So just make sure you're getting that as smooth as you can, and it's really going to end up bringing your project, making your project really, really well done.